American Civil Rights Union has done a number of very important things to support the Constitution, to carry on the work of Bob Carlson, who was the eminent authority on welfare reform and on constitutional issues. And so it's natural, I think, that this project should be one of the major interests right now of the ACRU. I don't think there's anything more important than protecting the integrity of voting in the United States. It's very interesting to me what's happening at the present time when our own government, believe it or not, is trying to suppress the integrity of the ballot and essentially protect those who would be interested in promoting voter fraud. My question is, why is the current government, the current administration, trying to prevent groups such as ACRU, secretaries of state like Chris Kobach, people throughout the country who are concerned about the integrity of the election? Why is the Department of Justice trying to prevent their efforts to make sure that we have integrity in our elections, and that people who are inclined to perpetuate or promote voter fraud are not being prevented from doing so? Now, there's a claim that somehow this suppresses certain groups voting. There's absolutely no evidence of that whatsoever, and as a matter of fact, the evidence is to the contrary. In states where anti-voter fraud acts statutes have been passed, the minority population voting has actually gone up, such as in Georgia. In addition to that, I think it's important to recognize that the one thing we do know, and the evidence is there, that voter fraud takes place throughout the United States. In state after state, there have been convictions, whether it's New York, West Virginia, Colorado, you can go through. And even more than important, perhaps, are the situations in those states where their voter fraud has been proved. They have also proved how this has actually shifted elections from one candidate to another because of the way in which the voter fraud was perpetrated. So I think in the next election, the pundits tell us it's going to be a close election. And I think it's absolutely critical that we do everything in this country to make sure that we have an election which is absolutely fair and where nobody's vote is being compromised because of voter fraud. If you remember back to 1960, there were real questions about whether that election was accurate because of what went on in Chicago, and there were allegations at the time. We saw in 2000 how a very close election in Florida ultimately held up for days the ultimate decision as to what the situation would be in that state. We cannot afford to have uncertainty, let alone illegality, contaminating the election results. And that's why protecting the ballot box, protecting the integrity of the election is so important. And quite frankly, all of us here every day have to show a voter ID for something, whether it's to cash a check, get on an airplane, go in a government building, go in a private building for that matter. And so there's no reason why this voter ID requirement, as an example, shouldn't be a part of this protection of the ballot box. There are ample opportunities for people who may not have, at this point, a voter ID, and that's a very small part of the population. They can get free an identification in every state in the Union. And so I think it's important that what we do here be picked up. Now, it's not just a matter of getting state legislatures to pass the laws. That's important. But it's also to alert the public of the potential for voter fraud and to get them enthused about making sure they do everything in their power, first of all, to get their states to pass the necessary legislation, and then secondly, to volunteer to be poll watchers, to take an interest themselves in what's going on in their jurisdiction. So that's why, Susan, I'm very happy to be here today with you and with ACRU, and we will be working very hard over the next few months to make sure that this is a fair election coming up in November.